Sagittarius. This is how the witch in your family dresses while secretly hating you. Sagittarius, there are moments in life when something unspoken stirs inside you. A quiet tension you can't quite name but can never fully ignore. Perhaps you have felt it too. The way a certain presence dims your light without ever raising a voice. The way certain silences feel heavier than words. Today, I want to speak to that part of you, the part that has always sensed the unseen currents even when others told you to brush it off. What I saw in your energy is not just a warning, but a profound reminder of who you truly are. There is someone close, someone cloaked in the image of loyalty, who carries a subtle envy that has quietly threaded its way through your life. Yet even more powerful than that darkness is the brilliant field of light surrounding you. A light that no shadow can diminish because it does not come from the outside. It comes from the depths of your soul, born from every silent victory, every time you chose to keep your heart soft in a hard world. This is not merely an astrology reading. It is a call back to yourself, to the wisdom you were born with, to the fierce and tender spirit you have always carried, often unnoticed but never extinguished. If something here resonates, stay with me. Let's walk this road together. And if you feel moved, sharing this space with others may be the spark that helps them remember their own light too. Gate 1. The hidden energies around your success. Sagittarius, success for you has never been just about reaching a destination. It's about the journey, the fires you walk through, the freedom you fight for, the truth you refuse to betray even when it would be easier to stay silent. But what happens when those closest to you, instead of celebrating your growth, secretly fear it? There is a truth your spirit has been whispering to you. Not everyone cheering for you wants you to win. Sometimes the sharpest envy does not come from strangers, but from those seated closest at your table. And often it doesn't look like hostility. It looks like subtle discouragement, delayed support, invisible barriers placed in your path when no one is looking. You were born under a sign that carries a sacred fire. A drive to expand, to explore, to live bigger than the limitations placed around you. Your dreams were never small, and neither was your spirit. But someone in your circle, perhaps someone who once seemed harmless or even nurturing, has quietly carried a resistance to your growth. They fear the mirror you hold up simply by daring to be more, to want more, to become more. Maybe you've noticed it. Advice that leaves you feeling smaller rather than stronger, backhanded compliments that linger uncomfortably, or a gnawing sense that your wins are celebrated a little too quietly. These are not accidents. Energy speaks louder than words. When you started to shine, it made the places in others where they chose fear instead of courage painfully obvious. And some people would rather dim your light than confront their own shadows. But Sagittarius, hear this. Your spirit was never meant to shrink to make others comfortable. You did not come into this life to betray your expansion for the sake of belonging. You came to blaze a trail so wide, so bold, that even those who once doubted you will be forced to confront their own limits. There may have been times when you questioned yourself, when the lack of support made you wonder if your dreams were too big, too unreasonable. But they were never too big. They were simply not meant for small-minded spaces. The universe has been observing your silent resilience. Every time you kept moving forward without applause, every time you believed in yourself when others hesitated, you planted seeds in places invisible to the eye but undeniable to the soul. These seeds are blooming now, Sagittarius, and no energy of jealousy, no matter how cleverly disguised, can stop what has already been set into motion. The light within you is ancient. It carries the codes of freedom, wisdom, and the kind of inner abundance that no outside validation can touch. And because of that, no amount of silent resistance can hold you back unless you choose to dim yourself. Realize this. The envy you sense is not a reflection of your flaws. It's a testament to the fact that you are touching a level of growth, power, and authenticity that others have not yet dared to claim for themselves. And that is not your burden to carry. You owe no one your silence, your shrinking, or your self-betrayal. You owe only this: to honor the flame inside you, to walk with your head held high, and to let your very existence remind others of what is possible when you refuse to settle. The ones who truly love you will not be threatened by your light. They will cheer it, nurture it, and build fires of their own beside you. The rest will fall away, not because you pushed them, but because they were never meant to walk this entire journey with you. Trust the unfolding, Sagittarius. Trust your path. And most of all, Trust that the universe has already aligned new alliances, opportunities, and sacred connections for you. Ones that will meet you at your level, not ask you to fall beneath it. You are not too much. You are exactly the right amount of fierce, free, and luminous. And your journey is only just beginning. Gate 2. The silent endings you didn't see coming. Sagittarius, endings are rarely loud for you. They don't usually arrive in dramatic scenes or sudden collapses. Instead, they come quietly, like a door slowly swinging closed without you even realizing when it started moving. There have been moments, maybe you didn't even name them, when the energy shifted. Conversations that once felt warm grew strained. Places where you used to laugh freely became tight across your chest. Dreams you once shared so openly began to feel too sacred to expose. And still, because of your generous heart, you stayed longer than you should have. You kept watering connections that no longer had roots, hoping that loyalty could save what was already silently ending. You see, Sagittarius, not all losses come wrapped in betrayal or anger. Some losses come wrapped in weariness, in a growing realization that your spirit is stretching, while theirs chooses to remain small. And no matter how fiercely you love, you cannot shrink yourself enough to fit into a space you have outgrown. This season you're walking through, it is a season of silent endings, of recognizing not only the relationships but also the habits, beliefs, and old versions of yourself that can no longer travel with you. It's a shedding so deep that sometimes it feels like grief, even though nothing obvious has been torn away. You were always the one willing to stay loyal, to give another chance, to believe in the best, even when your intuition whispered warnings. But loyalty to others can never come at the cost of betrayal to yourself. And that is the lesson life is asking you to learn now. Not through bitterness, but through clarity. Look back gently over the past few months. Notice the patterns, the places where you felt yourself dimming just to keep a fragile peace. The moments you caught yourself doubting your worth, based on someone else's inability to recognize it. The times you stayed silent because speaking your truth would have shattered a fragile illusion of belonging. You are not losing people. You are returning to yourself. When you stopped explaining your value, the ones who never truly saw you began to fall away. When you stopped apologizing for your dreams, the ones who were intimidated by your vision quietly stepped back. When you refused to be manipulated by guilt, the ones who thrived on your compliance lost their hold. This is not punishment. This is protection. The spaces you're clearing now are making room for the life you've prayed for. Whether you realized you were praying or not, you may feel lonely at times. You may miss the comfort of old patterns. But do not confuse loneliness with wrongness. Growth often feels lonely before it feels free. And you, Sagittarius, were born for freedom. What is ending now is not meant to follow you into the next chapter. The universe is closing these doors softly, almost tenderly, because it knows the weight your heart carries. It knows you would have tried to save what was never yours to fix. Breathe, Sagittarius. Mourn what needs mourning. Honor the love you gave, even when it was not returned properly. But do not cling to doors that have already shut themselves. Your soul made a contract before you came here, to rise, to expand, to live fully in your truth. And sometimes rising means letting go without a final conversation, a neat closure, or an understanding from the other side. You are allowed to move on quietly. You are allowed to honor your path without explaining yourself. You are allowed to feel sadness and still choose to keep walking. In the silence of these endings, there is a whisper. You are closer than ever to the life that matches your spirit. Trust that whisper. Trust yourself. Gate 3. Spiritual love and the soul's true connection. Sagittarius, you have always been a seeker. Not just of places, knowledge, or adventures, but of something deeper. A love that feels like home. A connection not built on games or fleeting excitement, but one that speaks the ancient language your soul has never forgotten. You have carried a vision within you, even when you tried to bury it. A love where you don't have to explain your heart, where you are seen without performing, where you are understood without having to translate yourself. And yet, for so long you settled for half versions of that vision. You settled because your heart was big enough to see potential, to believe in healing, even in those who could not meet you where you stood. But now, Sagittarius, your soul is calling you to something higher. Not a love born from the wounds of needing to be saved or understood. Not a connection where you are constantly proving your worth. But a love that is spiritual. A union that recognizes you not as a project to be fixed, but as a whole being to be witnessed and cherished. Spiritual love is not loud. It doesn't crash into your life like a thunderstorm. It moves quietly like rivers beneath mountains, steady and ancient. It doesn't demand to be noticed. It simply is, undeniable in its calm, sacred in its presence. You will know this kind of love because it won't feel like adrenaline. It will feel like breathing. It won't light fires of anxiety in your chest. It will spread peace through your entire being. It will not require you to lose parts of yourself just to be kept. It will ask only that you bring your full self forward, unedited, unmasked, unafraid. But in order to step into this kind of love, Sagittarius, you must first be willing to lay down the old patterns. The ones that told you love had to be hard to be real. The ones that convinced you had to work to be chosen. The ones that praised your loyalty but never honored your worth. You have carried ancestral patterns of sacrificing too much in the name of connection. Maybe you saw it in your family. The way love was tangled up with suffering, the way loyalty was demanded but not reciprocated. Maybe you learned early that to be loved, you had to dim your fire, hide your wild spirit, fit into smaller spaces than your heart was meant to inhabit. But no more. This next season of your life asks you to choose differently, to choose yourself first without apology, to recognize that your energy is sacred, and not everyone who desires your light deserves access to it. You will feel a shift inside you when the right connection appears. Not because it dazzles you with promises, but because it feels like something ancient remembering itself. You will not have to chase. You will not have to explain. You will simply recognize, with the deep knowing that has always lived in your bones. This is someone who does not fear your fire. This is someone who does not compete with your expansion. This is someone whose presence feels like the forest after rain. Fresh, alive, safe to breathe in deeply. They will not try to control you or fit you into a narrative that makes them comfortable. They will love you because of the very things that others tried to suppress. Your honesty, your restless spirit, your refusal to settle for half-truths. They will see not just the brightness of your laughter but the weight of your silences, and they will stay for both. But before that love can anchor itself in your life, Sagittarius, your soul must pass through one final threshold. The full release of what no longer serves you. This is where many falter. It is tempting to cling to what is familiar, even when it no longer nourishes you. It is tempting to look back at the ones who couldn't love you fully and wonder if you should have tried harder. It is tempting to settle for a half-life because the full life requires a courage few are willing to summon. But you are not many. You are Sagittarius, the traveler of realms seen and unseen, the bridge between earthly living and soul truth. Your path is not to compromise. Your path is to rise. There will be a moment, and you will know when it comes, where someone from your past tries to return. It may not be dramatic. It may be a soft message, a casual check-in. It may even come through a dream or a sudden memory. But the test will be clear. Will you choose the comfort of the old wound? Or will you honor the future you have fought so long to reach? Choosing yourself will not always feel triumphant at first. Sometimes it will feel like mourning, like standing alone in a vast open space, unsure of where to step next. But in that emptiness, something sacred begins to happen. Your soul starts to hum at its original frequency again, no longer distorted by fear, guilt, or longing. And when your soul hums at its true note, the right people cannot help but find you. Not because you sought them out desperately, but because you became visible to them by simply being who you are. This is the love story you were always meant to live. One where you are not saved but seen, not rescued but respected, not tolerated but celebrated. Imagine waking up next to someone who doesn't ask you to shrink your dreams to make them feel safer. Imagine having conversations where you are not calculating your words to avoid judgment, but speaking freely, knowing your spirit is understood. Imagine standing side by side, both growing, both expanding, neither fearing the other's light. This is not fantasy. This is the reality your soul is crafting in the quiet hours, in the choices you are making now. Every time you say no to what drains you, you are saying yes to this future. Every time you walk away from manipulation masked as love, you are stepping closer to this alignment. Every time you honor your intuition, even when your mind doubts, you are writing the love story that was carved into your spirit long before you arrived here. Sagittarius, you have spent lifetimes carrying wisdom for others. healing, teaching, guiding, even when your own heart ached in silence. Now it is your time to be carried too, not by another who demands your sacrifice, but by a connection that lifts you simply by being in its presence. You deserve a love that matches your magnitude, a love that feels like exhaling after a lifetime of holding your breath, a love that does not bind you, but sets you freer than you ever thought possible. And that love, the one that doesn't make you question your worth, is already making its way toward you. Slowly, quietly, like dawn creeping over a long dark horizon. Prepare your heart, not by hardening it but by softening even more, by believing that it is safe to be seen fully, even in your most tender places. Because when spiritual love arrives, it won't ask you to perform. It will simply whisper, in the language only your soul understands, I see you, all of you, and I choose you exactly as you are. Conclusion. You were always the light. Sagittarius, if you have stayed with me until this moment, it is no accident. There is a part of you that has always known, even through the confusion, the pain, and the silent endings, that you were born for something greater than survival. You were born to live wide open, fierce in your love, unwavering in your truth. This chapter you are closing is not about loss. It is about liberation. Every quiet goodbye, every silent step away from what no longer nourished you, has been a powerful prayer answered by the universe. You were not abandoned. You were protected. You have spent so long carrying others, making yourself smaller to fit into spaces that could never hold the fullness of who you are. And now, finally, you are being asked to carry only yourself, and to trust that in doing so, you will find others who carry themselves with the same integrity, the same grace. The light you were searching for was never outside you. It was always within you, quietly burning, waiting for the moment you would stop looking outward and start trusting inward. From here, your path will not be without challenges, but it will be true. And there is nothing more powerful, more magnetic, more unstoppable than a Sagittarius living from a place of radical self-trust and love. If something in your heart stirred during this journey, even a small whisper of recognition, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. Not because you owe me anything, but because every soul that finds its way to its own light makes this world a softer, more sacred place for us all. Your story is not ending, Sagittarius. It is only beginning, and this time it is being written by your own hand, in your own language, with the fire of your soul lighting every word. Welcome home.